UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson failed in his second attempt to force an early general election. The government's motion fell far short of the required two-thirds of the majority in the House of Commons. Mr Johnson's latest defeat came as a highly controversial 5-week suspension of Parliament began. Paul Ging reports.
The ayes to the right, 293. The noes to the left, 46.
The British government needed the support of two-thirds of MPs to trigger an early poll, a minimum of 434, but only 293 MPs voted for an election.
I will go to Brussels, our government will go to Brussels on October the 17th and negotiate our departure on the 31st of October. Hopefully with a deal, Mr. Speaker, but without one if necessary. I will not ask for another delay.
Mr Johnson accused the opposition of handing over to Brussels an extra £250 million a week for no purpose, while the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said a no-deal Brexit would start a whole new period of confusion and delay.
We're eager for an election. But as keen as we are not prepared to risk inflicting the disaster of no deal on us, our communities, our jobs, our services, or indeed our rights.
Commons Speaker John Bercow took a veiled swipe at Mr Johnson as he announced he'd stand down from his role, issuing a warning to the government not to degrade Parliament, and he made his views clear about prorogation.
This is not, however, a normal prorogation. It is not typical. It is not standard. It's one of the longest for decades, and it represents, not just in the minds of many colleagues, but huge numbers of people outside, an act of executive fiat.
Parliament's now due to be suspended for 5 weeks until October the 14th, little more than 2 weeks before Britain's due to leave the European Union, as ordered by the Prime Minister at the end of August. Paul Ging, Euronews.
Well, we're joined now in the studio by journalist Victoria Smith for more on this. Morning, Victoria.
Morning, Rosie.
Talk us through some of the chaotic scenes yesterday, assuming that last night's defeat does rule out the Prime Minister's hopes of having a general election before the 31st, of course, that Brexit deadline. Is that right?
Yes, and this is what he's facing now, Rosie. No to an early general election, no to a no-deal Brexit. So far. So this is his 6th defeat in 6 days, his 6th defeat in just over 6 weeks as Prime Minister, and it scuppered his plans to win a general election before the end of October, which would have given him the chance to push a no-deal Brexit through. So not a night of triumph for Mr Johnson last night.
A night of chaos, though. Give us a bit of an idea of what it looked like yesterday.
Well, it was like a kind of Parliament the musical, wasn't it? You saw some of the scenes yourself, didn't you? So you know that there was singing, there were all the political songs, there was Labour's red flag, there was Jerusalem, there was Flower of Scotland, even Bread of Heaven, and there was heckling as well, wasn't there? There were the opposition MPs who shouted "Shame on you" at Conservative MPs. Others were holding up signs reading "Silenced," of course referring to the fact that Parliament has now been suspended for a record 5 weeks. So very lively scenes in the House last night, which of course is about to go very quiet.
And of course the bill came through saying that their government couldn't say there would be a no-deal Brexit. Boris Johnson said, you know, it's do or die, but still murmurings that the government might try and get around that. How?
Well, that's a brilliant question. Boris Johnson has pledged to use the next 5 weeks of Parliament being suspended to strike a Brexit deal with the EU, but he's still not ruling out a no deal despite the brand new law taking no deal off the table. So he said, do or die. He said he'd rather be dead in a ditch than ask the EU for an extension. Does that mean he could resign? Probably unlikely. He's more likely, Rosie, to look for some kind of legal loophole that could stop an extension from happening. So how could he do that? He could perhaps get someone to ask for an extension in his place while making it clear that he personally doesn't want that. Perhaps, too, he'll be hoping or encouraging one of the other 27 EU member countries not to grant an extension. We know there's already frustration there. The French foreign minister said so yesterday, didn't he? And now the Luxembourg prime minister has weighed in with his frustration too. But that still may not be enough. So looking for a legal loophole is a high-risk strategy. But this is a high-risk player. His gambles haven't paid off yet, Rosie, but there's still time, perhaps.
There was another fairly significant story that came out yesterday. The Speaker of the House, who's been in position for 10 years or so, announced that at the end of October that would be the end. What impact, if any, is that going to have?
Well, this is another subplot in the whole theatre of Brexit that's going on at the moment. He has announced he'll stand down. He had the loud voice and the loud tides. He was in typically lively form last night, as you saw. I think he told one MP that he couldn't give a flying flamingo for his opinions. And the night did turn into a bit of a leaving party for him. Opposition MPs tried to stop him from getting up and leaving his seat. He had to in the end, but he did offer to shake everybody's hand. Not everybody took that opportunity. Some of the Tory MPs turned that down. Obviously, many on that side of the House are hoping to replace him because they've been questioning the Speaker's impartiality over Brexit. And in true theatrical style, as you say, the date he's chosen to go is October the 31st. That's the date, of course, that Johnson has pledged to take the UK out of the EU, so a busy day there. Now what will happen? Another Speaker will be chosen by all MPs in the House by secret ballot. And one of the contenders we hear could be Harriet Harman. She's the former Labour deputy leader and the longest-serving female in the House.